Good afternoon. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome you to the school board meeting this Tuesday, September 5th, 2023. The public is encouraged and welcome to address the school board at the hearing of citizens. The board clerk, Kathy Tompkins, has collected the cards, and no more cards will be collected once we begin the hearing of citizens. I will call you forward at the appropriate time. Today, our student representative is Alex Lamb, and he will be leading us in the pledge. Please stand and welcome Venice High School JROTC under the direction of Frank Troxel.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you again, Venice High School, JROTC. And before I mentioned, I want to welcome our student representative, Alex Lamb from Venice High School. Before we got started, I provided you with a certificate of appreciation. So again, thank you for joining us today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I'm a senior at Venice High School. I'm in the IBCB program. It's offered at my school for college credit and my career path certificate for my EKG certification. I currently have a 3.96 unweighted GPA and a 8.96 weighted GPA. I'm currently running track and cross country, and the clubs I'm in are Student Government, Key Club, HOSA, Science National Honor Society, and etc. My plan after high school is either attend UCF, UF, or FSU for either dental school or sports science.
Wonderful. Well, welcome. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you for having me.
And we wish you the best of luck after high school and after college. I know you. Moving on to the next item is the superintendent's report. Mr. Connor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's good. Hope everyone had a great Labor Day weekend. Nice to refresh with a 3-day weekend. And I want to start off tonight with our teacher and student achievements. We are pleased to share that we have 2 Southern Coast area 5th grade teachers from Tuttle Elementary, Justine Holcomb and Eric Lasordo, have released children's book about key learning subjects for students. Both authors had their published works locally with Pepper Tree Press, keeping the Suncoast area front and center from start to finish. Congratulations to those teachers. Also, Nicholas Parasilti is an EMT student from Northport STC campus. He has been presented with an award from the City of Northport Fire Department. After class, he was heading home and saw a gathering of people on the side of the road. Nicholas pulled over, got out, and started to render CPR to a patient who was in cardiac arrest due to trauma. So on September 15th at 6:15, Chief Gorski and the crew, who were all on the call, are going to be presenting Nicholas with an award in front of his classmates. That was great, outstanding work there. A couple of updates. We have our Y Vote poster contest. It's an essay, poster, and video contest that is for our high school students to share their thoughts on the importance of voting. Those submissions are due on October 17th, and winners will be announced on November 8th. You can go to the following link, my.lwv.org, for more information. We also have some schools we want to highlight. We have 3 top 100 schools as reported by the U.S. News and World Report. That is Pineview, number 2 in Florida, 6 magnets nationally and 13th nationally. And then Suncoast Polytech High School, which is 36th in the state and 491 nationally. And our own Riverview High School, which ranks at 88 in Florida and 1347 nationally, out of 1,485 public schools in Florida and over 25,000 high schools nationally. What a great report there. Just want to make an announcement about our Safety and Security Forum. We will be discussing overall our safety and security measures at our schools. All our employees and families and communities are invited to attend. As soon as we have those details, we are right now securing our venue, our date, our time, and the panelists will be finalized, and we'll have some more information coming out about that. But I just wanted to share we will be having that coming forth soon. Also, I'll be wrapping up. I have 2 more listening tours coming up. We have Booker, which was rescheduled due to the hurricane. That will be actually Thursday at Booker High School from 5 to 6, our staff members, and for the public in the community from 6 to 7. Also, this Saturday, September 9th, we added an additional listening tour meeting at Tuttle Elementary School in the cafeteria for our Spanish-speaking families. We will be meeting at 11 a.m., and we will have some translators available as we share and listen to our Spanish-speaking families about their needs as I go through the transition plan. Hello, Sarasota County families, staff, and community members. I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to everyone who helped coordinate and manage the school district's response to Hurricane Idalia. When it looked like the storm was heading in our direction, staff and administrators switched gears from their primary responsibilities to preparing our schools to be hurricane evacuation centers for our community. Less than 1 year after Hurricane Ian devastated the southern portion of our county, we were once again facing a potentially life-threatening storm off of our shores. Through our partnerships with Sarasota County and the Health Department, we embraced hundreds of residents seeking shelter from Idalia's strong winds and massive storm surge. While Sarasota County didn't escape Idalia's wrath unscathed, its track led it past our coast and evacuees could return home within 24 hours. I would be remiss not to extend a special thank you to our administrative staff. From opening of shelters, to command centers, to logistics, to coordinating and serving meals, you have all gone far above the call of duty to support our community in this time of need. I also want to thank our teachers and families for your flexibility and support during this disruption to learning. The 2 days missed will not need to be made up as we have planned for severe weather days in our calendar. Our amazing facilities team worked hard, assessing, cleaning, and preparing campuses, allowing educators to continue the important work of teaching every student every day. Hurricane season is far from over. After watching our team in action during this storm, I'm confident we will handle any future events with grace, compassion, and professionalism. Just want to give a shout out to our operations team who did a wonderful job in ensuring. And while we were scathed from severe weather, I know that we will be prepared, and hopefully we won't have to utilize and activate our teams, at least for the rest of this year and in the future. But I know that our team has done a good job in preparing. So thank everybody who is involved in that process. It is definitely a mission to get that all going. So thank you so much. And that is it for me, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I did want to highlight to thank staff, the communications, operations. I know that, as you mentioned, it's nothing compared to last year, but it was very smooth, and thank goodness that it did scathe us. But I know that there are other people in Florida that are suffering pretty seriously from the wrath of that. But thank you to the team, and thank you to Sarasota County government. You guys work really, really well together. I do hear this from other counties that we are very blessed to have strong working relationships with our county in order to get these things done without incident. And then lastly, I wanted to, I was thinking about the hurricane. I know we had some safety issues earlier on in the beginning of the year, and I'm looking forward to that listening tour as well. And then on the heels of that, we also had our retreat, which I found to be incredibly valuable use of time between the board members, the superintendent, Ms. O'Day, Mr. Renoff, and I look forward to more future productive meetings. So thank you for that. If there are no additional comments, we will move to hearing of citizens. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. When the timer flashes yellow, 1 minute remains, and you'll need to begin to summarize. Please stop speaking when the buzzer rings. Please note that respect for divergent viewpoints and civility should be shown at every board meeting. Whether you agree or disagree with the speaker, please listen politely, respectfully, without making any sounds of approval or disapproval, including clapping. I recognize that there's a lot of passion and emotion with the decisions that come before this board and the impact that they have on our students, families, staff, and community. As such, we believe it is important that we afford the opportunity for every speaker to be heard. Any comments during the hearing of citizens that would like to be responded to by the board, will take place at the conclusion of public comment. My request is that when you respond, you keep it to the issues that have been brought forward and refrain from directing it to any individual of the public. Per statute 1001.372, parent 3, anyone causing a disruption will first be given a warning, and if the conduct does not stop, you will be asked to be removed from the chambers. Moving to the first two speakers, I have Paulina Testerman and Layla Newcomb. Layla Newcomb. I'm going to get it right someday, I swear.
Good afternoon. My name is Paulina Testerman, and I have 2 children in Sarasota County Public Schools. I presume that today's school board meeting will include many parents who are upset over the handling of the recent situation where a 12-year-old student drew a map of Lakeview Elementary School complete with the location of cameras and names of teachers and included words like destroy and eliminate. Upon further investigation, the police searched the home of the student and found, quote, multiple unsecured firearms in his home. I know that our community, teachers, parents, and students are upset. I am upset. But I want to make sure that our community is focused on the actual problems and not just the symptoms. The symptoms are obvious. The problems are harder to recognize. I'm going to list the problems as I see them, and I'm hopeful that our community can work together to find solutions. Problem number 1 is a child who may have fallen through the cracks, and the question we all must ask ourselves is, how do we create infrastructure to prevent these situations in the future? The solution isn't rocket science. Teachers simply do not have the resources, time, or support to do everything that needs to be done in a school day. Teachers need more funding, more volunteers, and more hands on deck. Parents, I need you to hear me. This is only going to get worse since the passing in March of the voucher expansion program. Private schools will now be receiving your tax dollars that were intended for public schools. Public schools will now have even less resources. It's just a matter of time before school supply lists include toilet paper. Furthermore, organizations like Mrs. Ziegler's Moms for Liberty are already pushing for no health care in public schools, and that means no mental health services for students like this one. If that upsets parents, good, it should. We should all be outraged that public education is being fleeced, and it's obvious that less funding equals a dangerous environment for our teachers and our students. Problem number 2 is the fact that our current Sarasota School Board Chapter 5.32, entitled, quote, Zero Tolerance for School-Related Crimes, does not list the action of this student as punishable. If our community reads the language, you will see that drawing maps and making assumed threats is not punishable unless the content is mailed. This is a serious problem, and I encourage the school board to amend the language to be more inclusive of all threats, not just mailed ones. Problem number 3 is our community assuming that, quote, multiple unsecured firearms is illegal. Sadly, in the state of Florida, children can have access to a bunker of unsecured firearms, but unless the firearms are loaded, they are not illegal. For the sake of transparency, I am a gun owner. I believe in our Second Amendment, and I also believe in common sense gun control. You can believe in both. Now, the most important question is, what do we do to prevent this from happening in the future? The answer is vote. Vote for common sense gun laws and politicians who care about our students and our teachers in our schools. Vote for school board members who actually care about public education. Lastly, vote against all school board members who accept endorsements from organizations like Moms for Liberty, who are laser focused on tearing down public education so that private schools receive your children's tax dollars. This is how we prevent school-related shootings. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Thank you. Lila Newcomb. And then, I keep going now. Now I really am never going to get it right. And then after that is Erica Heister.
So anyway, Leela Newcomb, grandma of 3 in Sarasota Public Schools. And I'm not sure who needs to hear this here, but any or all of us here who may be of Christian ancestry, guess what? We are also all of Jewish heritage. Go back 2,000 years. Jesus Christ was a Jew. The original Christians were Jewish. So, barring anybody here whose heritage might be Buddhist or First Nation or any other totally non-related religions, we are all Jewish. I've been hearing a bit about anti-Semitic hate rearing its ugly head again lately, and I thought we were over that as a society. God, however you may worship him or her or Mother Nature or higher power, you get the idea, gave mankind the gift of reason. It's what sets us apart from wild animals. Over the centuries, different civilizations may have developed different sets of customs or rituals, religious or otherwise, but we're all human beings. Who decided that anybody was right or wrong? Now, on to my own personal experience. I went to a magnet high school for classical music. In my opinion, beautiful classical music, and some popular, is God on earth in a very high form. Now, I do not have the demographics of that school, but from my recollections and perusing my yearbook that I still have, 1984, I'm going to say that a huge segment of that population was Jewish. The talent, the creation of beautiful music for all to enjoy. We also had 2 magnet high schools based on academic ability. Again, large population of Jewish students, children whose families luckily survived the Holocaust, which hopefully nobody plans on repeating. Some of the greatest scientific minds are of Jewish heritage. Example, Albert Einstein, theory of relativity, Nobel Prize, and the list is too immense for a 3-minute speech. Jewish composers, I'm sure everybody's heard of Leonard Bernstein, George Gershwin, just to scratch the surface. However, people do not have to be famous to be counted as important. I doubt that there are very many famous people listening here today, but I am positive that all of us would like to be considered as worthy of living a safe life, whether we are of Semitic heritage or not. I hope and pray that we as a society can just live using the power of reason given to us and not like barbarians. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Erica Heister, Norman Wirtz.
Hello, my name is Erica Heister, and I have 2 kids at Lakeview Elementary. My question is a very simple one. It's pretty much a yes or no. In light of the recent events and knowing that there is a child in a family that is a threat to our community, and I don't know what his future holds, where he'll end up in the school system, or if he will, but I want to know, as a parent, if I'm registered for a school, can I find out if this particular student is in the school before I register my own children? Is that a parental right that I have to protect my kids?
Thank you. We'll reserve any comments for the end and then address as we possibly can. Norman Wirtz, Sebastian Gersel.
Hello. I'd like to speak today on teacher morale. I have an acquaintance who's a teacher, and she told me it's getting so convoluted to simply teach with so many conflicting, ridiculous, and micromanaging rules that soon it will be truly impossible to be it will be possible to be sanctioned or lose a teaching license or be fired for failure to follow administrative instructions, and more specifically the maze of contradicting requirements. The haters are trying to kill teaching in public schools. Sad and scary for our country. Whatever you can do to improve teacher morale and overcome these issues of things like this article from Carrie Anderson, where she talks about this problem with the naming, that if someone named Robert gets permission to be called Roberta and then asks for permission to go to the bathroom, apparently the teacher has to be sure that Robert, who's really wants to be called Roberta, goes to the little boy's room and not the other room. And that just takes away from teaching and destroys morale. And whatever you folks can do to mitigate those effects, please do so.
Thank you. Sebastian Gersel, Michelle Posey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the school board, Superintendent Connor, I am Sebastian Gerstel, a junior at Riverview High School. In civilized society, there are necessary evils: government, politics, taxes. In the realm of education, a necessary evil is administration. Administration does not teach children to read or drives them to school, but in order for our systems to operate, we require administration, and we appreciate them every day. In order to achieve success, our schools must operate off a backbone of integrity, respect, and honor, which, by the way, as we've seen today and after the hurricane, 99% of our administrators are the most talented, I would say, in the country, which is why it is paramount that there is constant accountability, transparency, and balance between the classroom and administration. It is safe to say, though, that this district is no saint. Lawsuits, lies, scandals, student achievement dips, violence, Sarasota truly has it all. But one school really has it all: Riverview High School. Only RHS has a principal who altered ESE data to cover up for the district. Only RHS has a principal who uses her power to investigate staff who speak against her. Only RHS has a principal who, when asked about her plan to address drug use, said, and I quote, "We can't smell it." Only RHS has a principal who ignores the concerns of students regarding anti-Semitism and in general ignores the concerns of students and staff. Only RHS has a principal who runs a school with the most workplace toxicity by a lot, and that's according to the SCTA and the number of HR investigations. Not to mention, when pressed on the issue, she blamed teachers. Guess what? Everyone else cited her as the source. Only RHS has a principal that is described by her own teachers and administration as a bully, biased, and out of touch. Only RHS has a principal who has totally destroyed her own ESC department, endangering teachers and students. Mr. Connor, this is nothing new. This has been happening for years. Students, teachers, taxpayers all deserve better. Or, as Riverview's principal views it, and I quote, "We have babies and the superintendent's kids." At least we finally know her priorities, which is why I'm here today demanding the termination of the principal of Riverview High School. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle Posey, Elizabeth Bornstein.
Hi, good afternoon. Michelle Posey. Starting off, I just want to compliment the superintendent and the board on agenda item 39. I do see a healthy turn here with the superintendent and school board communication plan, trying to lay out for the public exactly how you will communicate with the superintendent and how that trickles down into the schools. I really do love a lot of it, but I have to say, the unannounced classroom visits that I know you want to try to curtail, being that election season is here, I do understand why you maybe want to minimize classroom visits from some of the board members, but I think there is a need for some unannounced visits. When I hear you wanting to have a heads up before somebody visits a school, my mom mind goes, what are you trying to hide? Because you know when you make an unannounced visit as somebody who has young adult children, that's when you're going to stumble across things. So I ask that maybe you reconsider that. Item number 4 on this communication plan speaks specifically about constituent services. I think this was meant to make sure that every email to a board member gets forwarded so that we know it's been heard by somebody, most importantly the superintendent. But the way it's worded needs to change. It's unclear to me whether or not you're trying to give the directive for school board members to respond, I have passed your email on to the superintendent. period, or if you're also allowing them to continue to engage with their constituents, which is something we need. So if you could clarify that language before you pass this, are you saying that they're not allowed to engage with their constituents? I don't think that's the intent, but again, given our history as a district, I would like for you to clear that up. I'd like to touch briefly on CASEL and social emotional learning, capital SCL. If you take a close look at states in our nation that have a history with social emotional learning, SEL, specifically that is accredited by CASEL, you'll see an alarming trend in classroom deterioration. We like to say here in Florida, we want to keep America Florida, don't California my Florida, but then we follow some of the same, excuse my French, asinine programs that these states have proven do not work. I'm asking my chair, Ms. Ziegler, to please present a resolution to this board banning the use of all programs accredited and affiliated with CASEL. Force a vote on this dais so that each member of the board must identify where they stand on this emotional and psychological experiment being conducted on our students. I need them on record because negligence has consequences. Please push for a vote, and just so you know, our students' well-being and mental health is not up for sale to the highest bidder. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth Bornstein and Liz Barker.
I like to think I'm the calm after the storm. Greetings, board, superintendent, board attorney, student representative. I'm Elizabeth Bornstein, and I always want to shine the light on what's working and share gratitude. Incredible gratitude as a parent, and especially a parent of a Sarasota middle schooler, very dear friends at Lakeview Elementary as well. There just aren't adequate words to say thank you for all that was done, your team's work to mitigate a real serious threat of violence in our community to our students and teachers, administration, and staff. The level of volatility of what was reported, it's highly concerning, and also concerning about bomb threats made at Venice High. Safety is a real concern in our community and in our school district, and that's what we need you to step up and really respond to. Thank you to our superintendent for going into the community and listening, and to the board members responsible for setting up mental health support for our teachers, staff, and community. We need to be heard. These are traumatizing times in our community, and they're not going away, as was said before. I was actually at a PTO meeting this last week, and there was a lockdown, unplanned, and I was kind of stupefied at how fast it played out. In speaking with my child after, she commented that if the incident was real, that she was hoping for the next time that she would be in the classroom that she was in, because she was so relieved by how the teacher handled the situation. So we want to give the responsibility back to the teachers and to our superintendent, and not get caught up in all of the micromanaging and grandstanding and parental rights that get in the way of the school doing what the schools need to do to ensure safety. And that must be a priority in our community. We had a near miss. In medical terms, that's what this was. This was a near miss. It is a learning opportunity to do better for the next time, because there will be a next time. And we avoided adverse incidents, although we could still have that potential, and we need reassurance of what steps are being taken. Regardless of what the law allows, we still need to have law and order within the schools. So please don't let parental rights get in the way of taking care of human life. As a parent of a child, I want to know that safety is paramount. Thank you.
Thank you. Liz Barker, Derek Perozzi.
Superintendent Connor, board members, good afternoon. I'm Liz Barker, mom of 4 children in Sarasota County Public Schools, former school psychologist, candidate for school board, and president of the PTO at Lakeview Elementary School. I recently received one of the most frightening calls you can get as a parent. There was a threat of violence at my children's elementary school. It is reassuring to remember that on a fundamental level, the procedures worked correctly and an incident was prevented. However, we should view any such close call as an opportunity to learn and improve. First and foremost, I'm incredibly grateful for the swift and decisive actions taken by Officer Amy Jundy, the school resource officer involved in this situation. I also want to thank our Lakeview teachers and administrators who, despite their own feelings of fear and uncertainty, continue to come to school and provide a safe and nurturing space for our students every day. A consistent concern I've heard from parents is that communications regarding the threat were provided at a school level from the principals, rather than from the district, which resulted in 2 schools receiving information about the same threat at different times. In the future, we request a coordinated district-level response to ensure that communication is timely and consistent, and that a district-level employee be immediately assigned as a point of contact for questions and concerns. This incident has also brought into focus the issue of unsecured guns in the home with students and young children. The reality is that an estimated 4.6 million American children live in a home with at least one gun left both loaded and unlocked. 75% of school shooters obtain the gun used from the home of a parent or close relative. As places incredibly sensitive to the threat of a shooting, schools have a responsibility to educate families about secure gun storage so parents are fully informed and able to make the safest decision for themselves, their children, and our community. I've been to multiple meetings at Lakeview recently which have addressed the situation. I'm grateful to Mr. Enos and Mr. Edwards for attending my daughter's parent information night, where many of the safety concerns of parents were addressed. I faced terrifying questions, like how bulletproof is my daughter's portable? And would the flagpole be strong enough to bar the door against an intruder? Questions no parent wants to have to think about, but we all were. Similar concerns were addressed at a recent PTO meeting I led, which was attended by 5 district-level staff members. Through all of this, though, Ms. Rose, who represents District 2, where Lakeview is, was not present. Our community deserves to be represented by board members who are present, actively engaged, truthful, and trustworthy. As we come together to assess our successes and make a plan for the future, we can and must unite behind our common goal of making our schools safer and more effective learning environments for all students. Thank you.
Thank you. Derek Perosi, I have 2 cards for you, so I'm going to combine them, if that's okay. And after that's Shannon Clement.
Hey guys, I think I know most of you now, unfortunately. So my name's Derek Perosi, and if you're not aware, my wife was one of the teachers on the map to be targeted and killed. It also said my last name, which is Perosi, which my 2 daughters go to Lakeview as well. So it doesn't just mean my wife, it means my whole family was targeted to be murdered. So it's been a long 2 weeks. And I'm exhausted, and I don't even know what I can say right now. I think you guys are doing everything you can, but we're up against the law. The sheriff's office did everything it can, and that person who targeted my family to murder them is home and still has access to guns, although we're told they're locked up, but the RPO doesn't specify what that means or what the specifics of that lockup means. So it's tough. We're having a tough time. I'm having a tough time, obviously. And this is all I can do. I'm here right now. This is all I can do, is keep coming to every meeting and keep talking. And I've talked to civil attorneys. I've talked to the sheriff's department. I've talked to you guys. We're at the end. I mean, there's an RPO hearing this Friday. That's it. RPO says he can't own guns or have access to them, but he can't own guns or have access to them because he's a child, so it's the parents. And, I mean, he's going to a different school and coming home, and, I mean, I hope he gets help at the school, but he's coming right back to the same environment. I don't know what's changed. So we're just, you know, I look out my window every night, so I guess that's all I can really do more. But, I don't know, I'm trying to stay focused, and I'm hoping that we can help. You guys are doing the forum soon. I reached out to Sheriff Hoffman and asked him to do a town hall forum, and he basically said he doesn't think that's necessary. So I'm asked the sheriff's office if he can be part of the forum. I think that would be helpful. If DCF could be part of the forum, I think that could be helpful too. I also reached out to the Office for School Safety, which is established after Marjorie Douglas, and I spoke to the gentleman there. I can't remember his name. I don't know if you guys spoke to him yet, but maybe they can be involved with that forum too. So I don't know. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Shannon Clement. Gabrielle Lennon.
That's ready. All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Shannon Clement. I am the parent of a child currently enrolled in our public school system. My last few public comments have focused on things like common ground, collaboration, respect, and modeling the behaviors we want to see mirrored in our students, the majority of which I feel could teach us more than we collectively seem to be imparting to them. Today, I wanted to focus on accountability, which after that kind of strikes home. It's been mentioned before that accountability feels like an attack when one is unwilling to see how their actions or inactions have hurt others, but it's more than that. I had mentioned a few meetings back that especially as it applies to our reading stats, the key to overcoming that gap starts at home. In an ideal world, reading should begin the day that little human comes home from the hospital, if not in utero. I recognize not everyone can do that, nor will I shame anyone for not. But the one thing that would do wonders toward preventing a gap that's one thing that would do wonders toward preventing the gap in the first place. Encouraging reading at home for fun is integral for future success. The recent safety concerns that have arisen are another example of accountability. Are systems perfect? No. They are created by people that are intrinsically fallible. Mistakes are how we ultimately learn, after all. Therefore, no system will ever be perfect, and there will always be room for improvement. What we saw with Lakeview, however, is the core of a system that worked as intended, one which relied heavily on the SRO's previous experiences with the student. Are there areas for improvement? Certainly. Will there be discourse on what improvements should be? Infallibly. One can even point to the taboo concepts of diversity, equity, inclusion, and social emotional learning like empathy, collaboration, respect, and resilience as accountability. In theory, these are concepts that should be reinforced at school. Yet many of the negative behaviors we are seeing at the student level that necessitate this inclusion within a classroom are due to their lack outside of the classroom walls. A student that is not supported, understood, and accepted at home will not thrive, more or less excel within a classroom, regardless of what the school's environment happens to be. I often feel that adults, by and large, do not give our children and youth enough credit. They often overlook the fact that this human, even in pre-K, is a person with their own feelings, thoughts, perceptions, idiosyncrasies, etc. Every child in those classrooms is different, and each one of them needs support in different ways while also learning how to work within their own and others' differences. As parents and stakeholders, it's important that we hold our teachers, educators, and elected officials at all unequivocally accountable. But we also need to recognize that the education of our children, especially if we choose to place them within public ed, is a collaborative effort. It takes a village, right? That village, however, goes both ways. Not only do we as parents entrust our schools to educate and, in theory, reinforce the development of well-rounded, productive, tolerant, accepting humans, we must also self-reflect on what more we can actively do to contribute and ensure our schools and ultimately our students' success. All students, each child, every day. Accountability doesn't lie solely with the teachers or school staff. It starts at home.
Thank you very much. Gabrielle Lennon. And I'm sorry if I don't have that name correct. Okay.
Hi, I'm Gabrielle Lennon, and I see on that screen over there, it says, every student, every day. I am here to ask and beg all of you to please live up to that, what you put on your screen. There are so many students right now. I'm going to talk about one of the groups because it is the group that is suffering the most. But there are many groups that are suffering right now of our children in our schools. I'm going to talk about transgender children because horrible rules are now in place to pretty much annihilate them, because quite frankly, by the age of 20, 51% of transgender people have attempted suicide, and it is not because they're transgender, it is because of how society treats them. So I'm going to just do a quick educational thing on what transgender really means, because most people don't know this, and they are scapegoating a group of innocent, precious people. if you read neuroscience magazines, scientists believe now that in the first trimester of pregnancy, the reproductive system of the fetus is formed. And in later trimesters, varying degrees of hormones wash the brain, forming the brain structurally into male, female, or something in between. Usually, the hormones match the reproductive system, and the child ends up not transgender, but sometimes it's opposite, and then the child is transgender. Brain scans that neuroscientists are doing now, if they do they've done brain scans, say, and 3 people who are born with the same reproductive system, say a non-transgender or cisgender female who's straight, a cisgender female who's gay, and a transgender man, all born with female reproductive systems. The 2 cisgender women, their hypothalamuses and their white matters are the same. The transgender man's, his white matter and hypothalamus resemble that of a cisgender man. So these are, it is quite biological. And how can we scapegoat people who, it's not like they're choosing their genders. All these sound bites are lies. They're not choosing their genders. They are their genders. We are our brains. We are not our bodies. That's why if we become a quadriplegic, we're still ourselves, because we're our brain, not our body. Our body may be destroyed, but that's why when we're a day old, we're ourself, and when we're 100, if we're lucky to live that long, we're ourself, because we are our brains, not our bodies. And right now, these rules are killing children. Please help change them.
Thank you very much. That completes public comment. I wanted to make a couple comments really quickly and I know it's been mentioned before as far as the threat and any kind of safety issue. It is very challenging. I know all of us have had these conversations that there is a limitation from a legal standard of what we can say. And I know as a parent, that's got to be, it's frustrating because if you put yourself on the other side, wanting to know more. I can say that at any incident, having been on this board for 2+ terms, that every time we have a situation, there's always an opportunity to evaluate and see where we can improve. I have no doubt that's already going on right now. And again, I have no doubt that any level of any words that are stated at this point, based on the limitations of what can be said, is probably not going to feel like enough. And I totally understand that. But what I will say is I know Mr. Connor heard me respond, because it was my immediate response. It was one of the first times I've ever seen an incident where it was immediate about making sure families and people within that school had communication in concurrence with what was trying to de-escalate the situation. And so that was prioritized heavily. Is it always perfect? I don't know. I'm sure that there always are, but I was very happy to see that, and that was the feedback I got. Now, that at the same time, I think that as we reflect, and I'm very encouraged to have those future conversations, and again, there are opportunities for us to improve upon that, but when there are specific questions about any person's child or what they're doing or where they're at, no matter what the circumstances, it's not something we're able to share with anyone for the privacy of that family, just as anywhere else. But I understand those words don't really necessarily I understand that. I get you. But I want to address that, because I think I can understand the frustration, but there we have a requirement to follow the law and evenly. And I wanted to also mention, I wanted to thank the individuals who came back with some recommendations that regarding the threat assessment and using a mailed threat. I'm not familiar with that, a mail threat versus being found, but I think that's very good to bring forward. And then finally, just moving completely different gears here, was on the Castle statements. I have had ongoing conversations with our superintendent, really in a multitude of levels of, I've certainly raised my concern. I think I don't want to speak for board members. I know it's been addressed previously. I think the frustration part is how intertwined it is, and is trying to be thoughtful, because we have a large amount of student population, and so if you have to take a hard turn, and I would argue that there are things in statute or standards that would argue that the semantics make it really challenging, but I'm not giving this as a cop-out. It's a pretty regular conversation that's had with myself and the superintendent of trying to be very, very thoughtful and quickly assessing that. And so that's not lost on me. I will continue to pursue that as quickly and as effectively as possible. Mrs. Rose.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do want to share that I had the opportunity when the incident occurred at Lakeview to have a direct line to our Chief of Police to get a complete assessment of what was occurring and what our response was, as well as immediately following that, a direct line to our Sarasota County Sheriff, Kurt Hoffman, who I thoroughly had a conversation on every aspect that his organization was taking to assure safety for our students. I can speak as a principal for 14 years. I was I walked on campus every single day, and the first thing that I assessed was safety. Who is where, in what place, because before you can even start instruction and focus 100% on learning, teaching, you've got to know that everything is optimal. So I fully understand that and respect it. I also have enormous confidence in Superintendent Connor and our police force and their partnership with the Sheriff's Department. And Mrs. Posey, I take very seriously your feedback on the communication plan. If I need to be in schools, I'll be in schools. I am not in schools because I believe that we can operate as a team, and I have full confidence right now, and I foresee and predict that strongly will continue. If indeed the unexpected occurs and there's a reason for me to take on a more hands-on approach, you can bet your booties I will. Thank you, and I appreciate the public comments and take safety and security very, very seriously. We cannot be a optimal learning environment without knowing that we have every single thing in its place. And I don't think that using the public comment or dais to challenge political campaigns is really in the best interest of any of our students or community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Were there any additional comments? If not, we're moving on to the next item on the agenda. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda? Mr. Connor.
Madam Chair, we do have some revisions to the agenda after publication. Item 4, the personnel report and addendum were added to the instructional classified personnel report. Item 23 is a revised document, was added to the approval to award bid 24-30 for elevator maintenance. Item 34, budget amendments were added to the approval of the final budget amendments for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023. And lastly, item 35, financial statements were added to the approval of the annual financial report for year ending June 30th, 2023.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion for the consent agenda as amended?
I move for approval of the consent agenda as amended.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second by Mr. Enos. Are there any comments? Seeing none, please vote electronically. Well, mine did the same thing. Made me vote.
I did it twice.
Made me do it twice.
If it
Voting
works
twice up
twice.
here, just for the record. Well, you know what? Let's do a good old-fashioned voice vote. Mrs. Marinelli.
Yes.
Mrs. Rose.
Yes.
Mr. Enos.
Yes.
Mr. Edwards. Yes. And the chair votes aye, and the motion to approve the consent agenda as amended passes unanimously. There were no items pulled for comment. Moving on to new business, if I can get my pages turned. Item number 38. Is there a motion?
I move for the settlement agreement as proposed between the parties in the case of Lisa Thompson versus Sarasota County School Board, Sarasota Clerk's case number 2022-CA000975-NC to be approved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any comments? Seeing none, please vote on the item at hand. Let's give it another shot. Let's see if it works electronically.
vote number 1. Nope.
Okay, so we are voting on item number 38, the settlement agreement as proposed. Mrs. Marinelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Rose?
Yes.
Mr. Enos?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards? Yes. And the chair votes aye, and the motion that the settlement agreement as proposed between parties in case of Lisa Thompson versus Sarasota County School Board passes unanimously. Moving on to the next item of new business, item number 39. Is there a motion?
I move for approval of superintendent and school board communication plan.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any comments? So I just wanted to address, so thank you to members of the community who had emailed in and also for the comments made today. I will say, candidly, over my years and also seeing some other boards, I can see where sometimes coming in, these look like mechanisms to stifle, if that's the right word, transparency or the real governance role of the board. However, I also really do see the value of a streamlined process for communication to ensure constituents are responded to. I think that's the biggest priority, well, not priority, the biggest situation where we're a large district, there's a lot of moving parts, and having a process and systems, you'll hear us talk about this pretty regularly. We have, a ton of wonderful people, but a lot of areas for opportunity for improvement when it comes to a systems process. I see this as moving forward to the next step. I will say that just as much as, there's a lot of more, if you look at them more as professional courtesies and allowing for no curveballs or gotchas, but I will say as an individually elected school board member, and I have no qualms or do not believe there's any issue with the superintendent. If there was any reason that there were concerns, I would certainly bring that to the superintendent's attention. And if there was if it really, and I hope it never got down to this level, but I don't think at the end of the day, just to address the questions that were raised, that if there really is a need for whatever reason to have an independent site visit or what have you, we're going to be dealing with a lot more challenges than just that site visit. There's a broken trust at that point, and I think those are things that my hope is that even in this communication process, as it was addressed, if there is anything that's really broken between a board member and a superintendent, it affords its opportunity to be flushed out before it really trickles down to an impediment at the school site. And just to note, so I look at this as just a best practices process, but I want to reassure, nor do I think this is what is being trying to be imposed upon by the superintendent, but that it in no way limits or dilutes the constitutional authority and roles of us as a board and board members. So I did want to address that because I can see years down the way, or when someone gets new on the board and they'll say, you can't do this and you can't do this, and you say, I was just elected by the people to have oversight. And so I wanted to clear that up, and I think that's also important when you have a new board member coming on board, that they understand that this is a best practice, but it is no way with the intention of tying their hands behind their back in order to represent or respond to their constituents. So I hope that clears anything up. Mr. Connor, you had a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I think I want to bring clarity as well to that, and I'll echo a lot of what you said. I think this is a great structure and framework for all of us to operate within our roles and responsibilities as superintendent and as a board. I will say in relation to constituent services, those are really geared towards those day-to-day operations and those concerns that are happening at the school level, which it is the responsibility of the superintendent to have staff or directly address those issues myself. So you are always encouraged to reach out to your elected officials. That's why you elect them and put them in place, and you have the avenues to do that through email, telephone, forums that may be held by board members. So I just want to make sure there is clarity to that you can always go out and reach out to your board members for whatever reason in matters of concerns and for the daily operations of the schools. It is important that the board members share that consistently with the superintendent so that they can be addressed efficiently and effectively. So just want to bring clarity, and thank you for.
Thank you. Mrs. Rose?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do want to add that if you look at Florida statutes, a school board member does have the authority to go on any campus or in any classroom at any given time. This is something that we had an incredible retreat. It was really a venue that Superintendent Connor put together with a very impressive consultant that really started putting us on a page of unity where we could agree on many things that we know that our community is invested in and wants, which it did include safety and security. I do want to, of course, emphasize that piece, but just for the record, we can. I have the utmost confidence, and I do want to recognize Superintendent Connor. He's done tremendous work in a short amount of time, actually has exceeded extraordinarily high expectations of putting together a reorganization, bringing staff members on board that have, just as Superintendent Connor has, an incredible track record of growing student achievement in large districts with a lot going on. So I do want to recognize the reorganization, the focus on the climate and the culture. The feedback that I'm getting from the Sarasota County Teachers Association and teachers is one that's extraordinarily optimistic and positive. We're looking forward to starting negotiations and keeping in mind how important teachers and the instructional staff are. We had a unanimous vote in last year's negotiations for record-breaking raises, and I know that we all support our educators. So thank you very much, and thank you, Superintendent Connor.
Thank you. Mrs. Marinelli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to also echo what my fellow board members have said. And Superintendent Connor, when we were at the retreat and we were going over the communication plan, all 5 board members, we agreed to this communication plan. So, and as Ms. Rose said, legislatively, any of us can go to any school at any time that we want to as elected officials. But when we have made an agreement that we will all either go or not go, and somebody goes and speaks, then that person that is a board member that speaks should be representing the entire board. There's not an I when there's 5 board members who agree to something. We are the board, so if a particular board member is speaking, it should be representative of all of us. But if we've made the agreement that we're not going, or we want to go somewhere out of respect to Superintendent Connor, then I think there should be something set up so we know, so the rest of the board members, if we choose to go somewhere, we can go. Because it doesn't bode well with me when we've made an agreement, all 5, and then 1 or 2 shows up and the rest of us don't know. So if we're going to have this communication plan, which I do agree with, and I think the community input on it, anything to clarify is appropriate, but I just think it's very important that we are, especially on things when it involves safety and security, that we are all in agreement that that is the #1 priority, and it's all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to clarify a couple things. So in the agreement, there is a note in there that identifies, which I do like, this is a great improvement, that if there is any kind of event or opportunity for board members to attend something, that all board members will be alerted to that. I'm sure you could loop that in if there was a board member that wanted to speak and it was approved. I'm not sure. I mean, to your point, as I think there's a process that is being agreed upon. Mrs. Rose mentioned something which is true, that there is a statute, and I know this not because of what was happening in Sarasota, but there were other districts that were full-on preventing elected school board members from going on to a campus, which then it hinders their ability to do certain things. So I think, again, this is a best practice to make sure that we're not disrupting the school day. We don't have anyone for anything other than good faith efforts to go and visit a school. I know many of our principals are saying, come on, without telling us, I don't mind. Most say that, but I do think it's a best practice and a common courtesy. I think this just outlines it. But again, I think that if it's getting to the point where there are reasons that that a board member would want to go visit for a variety of reasons, and there is a intentional prohibition of that, then we're in a completely different situation, and that would be raised, in my mind, the most appropriate place and I hope this will never happen, and I believe it won't happen, but would be at the dais as a board to discuss that, because then we're dealing with a mistrust and a lack of respect. And so this whole process, this whole communication plan would kind of be out the window. So, but in a positive note, I think that this really does define a lot of those processes to keep things moving, make sure constituent issues and concerns are addressed quickly, and don't bottleneck at a board member, particularly when it requires administrative responses. Mr. Edwards.
Thank you. I think it was a very productive retreat, and I do think the communication plan does say all that we want it to say. For me personally, I would never, that I can think of, attend a school unannounced. I just, that screams to me mistrust and gotcha. And that's really not why I visit schools. I visit schools to show solidarity. I visit schools to learn. I visit schools to hear and to listen. And that helps, in my opinion, make me a better school board member. And it gives me the opportunity to be thoughtful and learn about how I should vote and what my votes would look like. In terms of being visible at any school board function, for me personally as a school board member, I try to go to as many of those things as I possibly can and not speak. Mrs. Ziegler spoke at the ribbon cutting at the Dreamers Academy. I was there to show support for the concept in the school, and I just wanted to be part of that event. So that's really why I go to things, why I was at Lakeview that night, was to just let people know I care. And that, to me, is what school board members do, whether they show up or not. I trust that the people who sit on this dais do care. Sometimes we disagree, but I know that we all do care. And I've said this often. Every single time we are in executive session and we're talking about safety and security, there is no disagreement. There is all for one and one for all of what's in the best interest of our students. So I reiterate that.
Thank you for those comments. Are there any additional comments before we vote? Okay, seeing none, we're voting on the communication plan devised by the board and the superintendent. And if you should be able to electronically vote, third time's the charm. Ah, it is. And the motion to approve the communication plan devised by the board and the superintendent passes unanimously. Are there any additional comments or board members? Mr. Enos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to just say two quick things. First thing about safety and security, I can tell you that as I was hired and came as the chief of police, and now you have Steve Lorenz, of course, the sheriff, and the rest of the chiefs, and talking to Mr. Connor, I can tell you that we meet and exceed by far every national standard as it relates to school safety in the country. There are so many things that have been put into place that we made sure that were put into place, that I made sure that was put into place with my kids also being in school. And I know from Ms. Rose from being a principal, Ms. Marinelli, that we worked at length with contracts with the sheriff's office when I was there. I can tell you that as well as the school police department and all the training they did off the summer, which if you don't know, they're the only police department that's had the rapid response training from FDLE to schools as an agency, that they went out and they took that as well as participated with other agencies who came. What I could tell you is that when it ultimately comes down to is that there are citizens also have rights no matter if they're the bad guy or not. And we have to make sure as a society that we maintain their rights as well as we maintain the rights of everybody else. And sometimes that is a very difficult thing as it relates to law enforcement that I was a part of for 32 years, 22 in the school district. So what I would say is that if you have any questions, to make sure that you reach out. I know that Chief Lorenz will take calls. I know that if you have any questions or concerns, where kind of breaks the line there, it kind of splits it, is that safety and security as a board, when we talk about it, we go to executive session. And the reason being is that it's confidential information, because we're doing things that we want to make sure that we're all on the same page, that we all know that we're doing. And we don't need, I hate to say it, for the bad guys or the people that may do bad things to also understand what the tactical plans are that come with the district. So that being said, I can assure you that for safety and security is that we meet or exceed every national standard because I put them in, as well as last school year or 2 school years ago that Niche rated us as the #1 safest school district in the state of Florida. So even though that may not, based on what happened, it also would say is that the youth mental health assessment also changed this summer by the Office of Safe Schools. And that's also things that are in place to be able to catch as many kids and students that we can to be able to provide service. So with all of that and the changes, I just want to make sure everybody understands we legitimately, and I know dealing with the board, you know, and what I've done nationally as a expert in school safety, is that I make sure that I'm always closely monitoring what we're doing and making sure that we're putting it in the very best practices. But I can tell everybody the way that you prevent a school shooting is one thing, is relationships that the community have with the school and the school staff. That's so that when you see something, say something. That what I said and always will say is that you have to do something. So that if you have a concern, you send that email, you send that thing, you have the Fortify Florida. Parents can call that too, which is the anonymous hotline to the state. When you make that call, it not only comes to the school district, it also goes to the 911 Communication Center, which then also goes to the agency in which the school lies. So if it was in the city, it would go to the city. If it was in the county, it would go to the sheriff, as well as coming here. So we have multiple eyes. And a lot of it is about education and the perception of what we're doing. So I don't know how many people knew that Fortify Florida, that you see their posters up on campus, that as a parent, you can contact it too, text it in, give your complaint. I saw on Instagram, my daughter came, or my son, that so-and-so is in crisis, whether it's mental health crisis or it's a violence, that every single one of those is documented. It has to be investigated. No exceptions. Because as I testified at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas in regard to the shooting at Parkland, I can tell you is that's one of the things that the state is trying to capture based on those previous incidents, is that every single threat will be investigated, and it comes back to the district to make sure that they are. So if you have questions, please reach out and we'll let you know exactly what we can within the limitations. But this also was a case where it comes back to how do you prevent school shootings? It's kids trusting teachers, it's parents trusting teachers, it's administrators trusting, it's the community, it's everybody coming together so that we can take that swift action in order to do the investigation. And I can tell you, and I know that Chief Lorenz will say there was plenty of times at 3 o'clock in the morning that my phone rang because the sheriff's officer, one of the city police departments, was at a student's house. Because if you don't know what the standard is, we go out there, we talk to the parent individually, we ask them, we've received this threat, we speak to the kid, we see if there's any threat to self-harm or any other harm, and then what we do is we ask if they have access to guns, which we can. Then what we do is we tell that student, you can't come back to class until the threat assessment team does an evaluation on you to put whatever safety plan that needs to be put into place for everybody. So I don't know how many people knew that, but plenty at 3 o'clock in the morning I've received those calls that this is what's occurring in our community. Because I can tell you, we're all, number one, and it's been set up here, is we are 100% about school safety. Because if you don't have safety and kids don't feel safe, they can't learn. So we have to make sure that maintains as a priority, and it's going to take everybody in this community. Just when I was the chief and I spoke on this, it takes all of us to come forward, because the only commonality in every school shooting in the country, there's only one, is somebody knew but didn't come forward. That's it. So that comes back to is us continuing to move forward and to speaking and talking. And when you have safety concerns, you say those safety concerns, and then you let us to investigate it. And sometimes the outcome is not necessarily as we want it, because even bad guys have rights in this country, because that's where we're founded. And then the second thing after that heavy piece I just said is I'd also like to congratulate Mike Norvell of the winning Florida State University Seminoles over their victory of the SEC foe of LSU. I'd like to just give him a shout out from this dais and thanking them, and also Utah for beating the Gators on Thursday night. I might as well go into it, and Duke last night for beating Clemson. And with that, I will say thank you.
Thank you for that update.
One more.
Oh, go ahead.
Coach Wheatley, 700 games.
I know. My goodness. That's amazing. He's amazing. Mrs. Marinelli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And retired Chief Enos, thank you for that great explanation. And I just want to reinforce, too, as awful as the Lakeview incident was, we all were kept apprised all day long, all evening long, so we all knew. But I would like to address, there was a comment that, yes, students do fall through the cracks. But I have to say, I don't think this student did. Because we're talking about parental rights, and parental rights belongs to everybody. And a parent can say, I do not want my child to receive any services. And if that is said, whether we agree or not, that can happen. Except.
Excuse me. Sorry. Wait, please. I completely respect and understand, but please, we still have to have order.
A parent can say no, they do not want to have their child. And there are legal ways that a school district could choose to go.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I want to adjourn. I'm sorry. This is a very emotional. I recognize that. I want to be as respectful as I can, but we still have to have decorum. There cannot be back and forth. Otherwise, we'll have to address and just adjourn. If you want to conclude your statements.
Well, it isn't a highly emotional, and people want to hear what they want to hear, so I will stop.
Thank you. Mr. Enos, thank you for your comments and your expertise. As we look forward and ahead, as Mr. Connor mentioned, we'll ensure that there is a more appropriate format so that we can have a dialogue where it's not a dais, and it just doesn't really, it's not set up for the most productive conversation. But I want everyone to know that it is truly the highest priority, and the limitations are frustrating, but they are the law, and we do have to follow them. But we, having been on this board and seeing the investment and priority that we put forward, going back, as I remember early, it was like 2015, and the investment we put in infrastructure. And you can invest all of that, but really at the end of the day, it comes down to the people, as you mentioned. And there are, sadly, there are some frightening things out there, but when people do as they were intended to, we're able to avert any kind of risk, and I'm thankful to God that was the case, and hope that, and I know how hard this team works, that we'll be working diligently to look through every single angle of how we can improve processes again and again, but that does not diminish the personal, very, very personal situations that many of you had to deal with, and I don't want our words to come off as insensitive in any way, because that's not the intent at all. So, Mr. Connor, you'll be providing updates on the security, I don't know if it's a seminar forum. Okay, so that's yet to be determined. Okay. Are there any additional comments? As we close out, just the public hearing to adopt final millage and budget meeting is scheduled for Monday, September 18th at 5:15. This next scheduled work session will be held on Tuesday, September 19th, and the board meeting scheduled for Tuesday, September 19th will be held at the Venice Performing Arts Center at Venice High School starting at 6:30 p.m. We stand adjourned.